James Miller had been collecting garbage in the Oakwood neighborhood for over 15 years. Every Monday and Thursday his truck rumbled down the peaceful streets lined with neat houses and trimmed lawns. He knew the neighborhood like the back of his hand, which families put out recycling properly, which ones always had too many bags, and which houses changed owners over the years. Most people barely noticed James. They'd occasionally wave from their porches or windows, but he was mostly invisible to them, just the man who made their trash disappear. But James took pride in his work. He was reliable, thorough, and over time, he'd become something of a quiet guardian for the neighborhood. The Thompson family at 247 Maple Street had moved in about 3 years ago. James had noticed right away that they were different from other families. The father, a tall man with a permanent frown, never acknowledged James with even a nod. The mother, thin and nervous-looking, occasionally rushed out with last-minute bags, but avoided eye contact. There was a teenage boy who James rarely saw except sometimes slouching to the school bus, headphones clamped over his ears. And then there was the little girl, about 8 years old. James didn't know her name yet, but he'd spotted her peeking through the curtains on collection days. Unlike most kids who would wave excitedly at the garbage truck or run outside to watch the hydraulic lift, this girl just watched silently from behind the glass. Something about her sad eyes stuck with James. "Morning, Pete," James called to his colleague who operated the truck's mechanical arm. "Looks like the Hendersons are on vacation again. No bins out front." Pete nodded, checking his watch. "We're making good time today. Might finish early if traffic stays light." As they approached the Thompson house, James noticed the curtain move slightly. The little girl was there as usual, but today something seemed different. Her face was pressed closer to the glass than normal, and even from the street, James thought, he could see tears on her cheeks. "Hold up a second," James told Pete, frowning as he watched the front door of the house crack open. To his surprise, the little girl slipped out. She was wearing pajama pants and a too-big sweater despite the morning chill of early October. She looked around frantically, then ran straight toward the garbage truck. James jumped down from his seat immediately. Something was clearly wrong. The girl's face was streaked with tears, her blonde hair unbrushed and tangled. "Hey there," James said gently, kneeling down to her level. "Are you okay?" The girl glanced back at her house fearfully. "Please," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I need help." James felt a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn air. In 15 years on the job, he'd helped with plenty of small problems, retrieving accidentally thrown away items, calling for help when an elderly resident fell, even rescuing a cat stuck in a storm drain once. But the look in this child's eyes told him this was something much more serious. "What's your name?" he asked, trying to keep his voice calm and friendly. "Lily," she said, wrapping her arms around herself. "Lily Thompson." "Nice to meet you, Lily. I'm James. I've seen you watching from your window." She nodded, glancing back at the house again. "I'm not supposed to talk to anyone," she admitted in a whisper. "They'll be really mad if they know I came outside." Pete had turned off the truck's engine and was watching with concern from a distance, clearly sensing that something wasn't right. "Who will be mad, Lily?" James asked carefully. "My mom and dad, and my brother gets really angry too." Her small shoulders tensed up. "But I couldn't stay quiet anymore, not after last night." James felt a knot form in his stomach. He'd been through mandatory reporting training as a city employee. He knew the signs to watch for, and everything about this situation was raising red flags. "Did something happen last night, Lily?" he asked, keeping his voice level. She nodded, a fresh tear sliding down her cheek. "My brother broke my arm last year. The doctors fixed it, but Dad told them I fell out of a tree. We don't have any trees in our yard." The words tumbled out of her now as if a dam had broken. "Last night they hurt my dog because he barked when they were doing their business in the basement. They said they'd get rid of him if I told anyone." James struggled to keep his expression neutral despite the anger flaring inside him. "What kind of business, Lily?" "They have machines and bags of powder. Lots of people come late at night. I'm supposed to stay in my room, but sometimes I get thirsty and see things." She looked down at her worn sneakers. "Last night was really bad. They were yelling and my dog wouldn't stop barking and—" Her voice broke. "I think they hurt." Him really badly. I couldn't find him this morning. James's mind raced. What the girl was describing sounded like a drug operation, and the suggestion of abuse was clear. He needed to get help immediately, but he also needed to keep Lily safe. "You're very brave for telling me this," he told her sincerely. "I think we need to call some people who can help. Is that okay?" Lily's eyes widened with fear. "They said no one would believe me. They said I'd go to a horrible place if I ever told." "That's not true," James assured her, his heart breaking for the terror this child had been living with. "There are good people whose job is to help kids who are having a hard time, and I promise you, I believe every word you're saying." Pete had approached cautiously. "Everything okay?" he asked, though his expression made it clear he knew it wasn't. James gave him a meaningful look. "Can you call dispatch? We need police at this address right away." Pete nodded and headed back to the truck's cab to use the radio. "Lily, is anyone else home right now?" James asked, scanning the silent house. "Everyone's sleeping. They always sleep late because they stay up all night with their friends." She shivered, and James realized she didn't have a coat. "Here," he said, taking off his work jacket and wrapping it around her small shoulders. "Let's go sit in the truck where it's warmer, okay? Pete's calling some people who will come help." Lily looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mix of hope and doubt. "Will I get in trouble?" James shook his head firmly. "You did exactly the right thing, Lily. Sometimes adults do wrong things, and brave kids like you need to tell someone safe. I'm really glad you picked me to tell." As he guided her toward the truck, Lily suddenly stopped. "My dog. What if he's still alive? He's small and white and his name is Buddy." James felt a surge of protectiveness. "We'll make sure to tell the helpers about Buddy too, okay? They'll look for him." From inside the truck, Pete gave a thumbs up, indicating that help was on the way. James lifted Lily into the passenger seat of the garbage truck and closed the door. He could see her visibly relax once she was further from the house. As they waited, he kept her talking about normal things, her favorite subjects in school, books she liked to read, what she wanted to be when she grew up. Behind the conversation, his mind was processing what she had revealed, and he silently promised this little girl that her days of living in fear were about to end. The cold October morning air bit at James's face as he stood beside the garbage truck, keeping a watchful eye on the Thompson house while Lily sat safely inside the cab. Pete was on the radio with dispatch, explaining the situation in a low, urgent voice. James couldn't shake the feeling that every minute they waited put Lily at greater risk if her family discovered she was missing. "Police are on their way," Pete said, climbing down from the driver's seat. "They said to stay put and keep the girl with us." He glanced at the house nervously. "Dispatch mentioned they're sending officers quietly first. No sirens." James nodded. "Smart move." He looked at Lily through the window. She was huddled in his oversized work jacket, her small fingers playing with the zipper. Despite everything, she seemed calmer now, as if the simple act of speaking her truth had lifted a weight from her thin shoulders. "I've seen things over the years," James said quietly to Pete, "but nothing like this. That kid's been living in fear for who knows how long." Pete shook his head. "Makes you wonder how many other houses we drive by every day where things aren't right behind closed doors." A young woman walking her dog on the opposite side of the street slowed down, curiosity evident on her face as she noticed the stopped garbage truck and the workers talking seriously instead of collecting trash. James gave her a casual wave, not wanting to draw attention to their situation. The last thing they needed was a neighborhood spectacle before the police arrived. James climbed back into the truck to check on Lily. "How are you doing?" he asked gently. She looked up at him with those big, serious eyes. "Are they coming soon? My dad sometimes wakes up early to check on me." "They're on their way," James reassured her. "Very soon. Can I get you anything? Are you thirsty?" Lily shook her head, then suddenly looked panicked. "My backpack. My special things are in my backpack under my bed. If I don't come back, they might throw them away." James made a mental note. "We can tell the helpers about your backpack. They'll make sure you get it." "It has my mom's picture in it," Lily said, her voice dropping to a whisper. James was confused. "Your mom's picture?" My real mom. The one who lives in heaven now. Dad married Karen after, and she doesn't like me to talk about my real mom. This new piece of information added another layer to the already complicated situation. James felt a fresh wave of sympathy for the child. That's a very special picture then, he said. We'll make sure you don't lose it. Lily nodded, looking slightly relieved. Then she asked, what will happen to them? To my dad and Karen and Tyler? James chose his words carefully. The police will talk to them and figure out what's been happening in your house. Their job is to make sure everyone follows the rules and that kids like you are safe. Tyler says the police are stupid and can be tricked, Lily said matter-of-factly. He says Dad pays them to leave us alone. James felt a chill at these words. If there was corruption involved, this situation could be even more dangerous than, he thought. Some police officers might make bad choices, James admitted, but most of them want to do the right thing. The ones coming today will help you, I promise. Lily looked unconvinced. That's what the school nurse said last year when she saw the bruises. But then Dad talked to her boss and nobody helped me. James struggled to keep his expression neutral despite the anger building inside him. How many adults had failed this child already? This time will be different, he said with conviction. Because this time I'm not going anywhere until I know you're safe. A flicker of hope crossed Lily's face. Really? Really. Just then, Pete tapped on the window and pointed down the street. 2 unmarked police cars were approaching slowly, followed by a standard patrol car keeping its distance. They parked a few houses away, and plainclothes officers stepped out, walking casually as if they were just neighbors out for a morning stroll. They're here, James told Lily. Those people in regular clothes are police officers. Her eyes widened. They don't look like police. Sometimes they don't wear uniforms so they don't scare people, James explained. I need to go talk to them for a minute. Will you be okay here with Pete? Lily nodded hesitantly. Pete gave her a kind smile through the window and a thumbs up. James walked to meet the officers, his heart pounding. A woman in a dark blue sweater approached him first, showing him her badge discreetly. Detective Rivera, she introduced herself quietly. You called about a child disclosing abuse and possible drug activity? James nodded. The girl's name is Lily Thompson. She ran out to us during our route about 20 minutes ago. She's 8 years old and says her family is involved in some kind of drug operation. Mentioned machines, powder, people coming at night. She also disclosed physical abuse, said her brother broke her arm last year and her parents lied about how it happened. Detective Rivera's face remained professional, but her eyes hardened. Where is she now? James gestured toward the truck. In our cab. She's scared but talking. Said something about her dog being hurt last night as punishment for barking. Another officer joined them, a tall man with a serious expression. We've got the house under surveillance, no movement so far. Detective Rivera nodded. Let's talk to the girl first, get more details before we approach the house. They walked to the truck and James opened the door. Lily, these are the helpers I told you about. This is Detective Rivera. Lily shrank back slightly in the seat. Hi, Lily, Detective Rivera said, her voice warm but not condescending. You've been very brave this morning. Would it be okay if I ask you a few questions? Lily looked at James, who nodded encouragingly. Okay, she said in a small voice. Can you tell me who lives in your house with you? My dad, John, my stepmom, Karen, and my brother, Tyler. He's 17. And you mentioned some concerning things happening at your house. Can you tell me a little more about that? As Lily began to speak, her words came faster, as if she'd been waiting years to tell someone. She described the basement setup with scales and plastic bags, the revolving door of sketchy visitors late at night, the shouting and the punishments when she made noise or was spotted by visitors. They have guns too, she added, making the officers exchange glances. In the drawer by Dad's bed and in the basement behind the water heater. James listened, amazed at the child's detailed observations. She'd been noticing everything, storing, hid away, waiting for a chance to tell someone. When she finished, Detective Rivera thanked her. You've been so helpful, Lily. We're going to check out your house now, but first, we're going to have you go with Ms. Chen here." She gestured to a woman in a gray coat who had approached quietly from the second unmarked car. "She's a social worker who helps kids like you." Lily's grip tightened on James's jacket. "Can James come too?" The adults exchanged glances. It wasn't standard procedure, but the girl clearly trusted the garbage man. "I'll come check on you a little later if that's okay," James compromised. "Ms. Chen is going to take good care of you right now, and I need to help the officers understand exactly what you told me." Lily reluctantly agreed. Before climbing out of the truck, she suddenly threw her arms around James in a quick hug. "Thank you for believing me," she whispered. James had to swallow hard against the lump in his throat. "You're welcome, Lily. Everything's going to get better now." Ms. Chen led Lily to her car where she would be safe and out of sight. As they walked away, James could see the social worker already building rapport, her hand gently resting on Lily's shoulder. The police moved quickly after that. With Lily's information about weapons and the layout of the house, they coordinated a careful approach. More patrol cars arrived but waited at a distance. James and Pete were asked to move their garbage truck further down the street but stay available for questioning. From their new position, James watched as officers surrounded the house. Detective Rivera and her partner approached the front door, while others covered the back and sides. The neighborhood was waking up now. Curtains twitched in nearby houses as people noticed the police presence. An elderly man walking his dog stopped to stare until an officer politely asked him to move along. The knock on the Thompsons' door echoed down the quiet street. James held his breath. After what seemed like an eternity, the door opened a crack. A heated exchange followed, voices rising. Then suddenly the door was flung wide as officers pushed their way in. "Guess they found something right away," Pete muttered beside him. James nodded, relief washing over him. Lily was out, she was safe, and now the people who had hurt her would face consequences. The system that had failed her before was finally working. 20 minutes later, the front door opened again. Officers led out a man in handcuffs, John Thompson, James presumed, his face a mask of rage. A woman followed, also handcuffed, her eyes darting around wildly as if looking for escape. Roots. Last came a lanky teenager, head down, shoulders hunched in defeat. As they were placed in separate police cars, Detective Rivera walked over to where James and Pete waited. "You did good," she told them. "We found exactly what she described. A mid-sized drug operation in the basement, weapons, the works, and signs of abuse throughout the house. We also found the dog." James was almost afraid to ask. "Alive?" Detective Rivera's face softened slightly. "Yes. Injured but alive. Animal control is taking him to a vet now." James felt a weight lift from his shoulders. "And Lily? What happens to her now?" "Tonight, emergency placement with a foster family. We trust. Then we start looking for family members who might be able to take her." She mentioned grandparents. She talked about a real mom who died, James recalled. Maybe the maternal grandparents are still around. Detective Rivera nodded. "We'll check into it. Child Services will handle that part." She pulled out a business card. "We'll need official statements from both of you, but that can wait until tomorrow. Call this number in the morning." As the police cars began to pull away and the neighbors gathered in small clusters to speculate, James stood by the garbage truck feeling strangely empty. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving him drained. "We should finish the route," Pete said eventually. "Office will be wondering what's taking so long." James nodded, but before climbing back into the truck, he took one last look at the Thompson house. Just an ordinary house on an ordinary street. You'd never know the darkness it had contained or the courage of the small girl who had finally escaped it. "Someday," he said quietly to himself, "I'll have to tell my own kids about this. About why it matters to notice things, why it matters to listen." Back in the garbage truck, James and Pete sat in silence for a moment, both processing what had just happened. Their ordinary Tuesday morning route had turned into something neither of them had ever experienced before. The Thompson house, now surrounded by police tape and buzzing with officers, looked completely different to James now. Not just another stop on his route, but the site of a young girl's courage. "Should we call the office?" Pete finally asked, starting up the truck's engine. James nodded, reaching for the radio. "Yeah, we need to let them know what happened. We're way behind schedule now." As Pete guided the truck away from the scene, James contacted their supervisor and briefly explained the situation. The voice on the other end was understanding. "You two did the right thing," the supervisor said. "Don't worry about the route, take your time, and if you don't finish today, we'll handle it." James thanked him and hung up, surprised by the immediate support. Their job wasn't usually filled with drama or unexpected events, it was about routine and reliability. Today had shattered that completely. "You okay?" Pete asked, glancing over at his partner. James ran a hand over his face. "Yeah, no. I don't know. Keep thinking about what would have happened if we'd been 5 minutes earlier or later on the route. She might never have gotten out." "But we weren't," Pete pointed out. "We were right, there when she needed someone." The neighborhood continued around them, people walking dogs, heading to work, checking mail, all unaware of the life that had just been changed forever. James wondered how many other secrets were hidden behind the doors they passed every week. They continued their route in relative quiet, both men occasionally sharing thoughts about what they'd witnessed. By lunchtime, they were back on schedule. But James couldn't stop thinking about Lily. Where was she now? Was she scared? Did she have her backpack with her mother's picture? When they returned to the depot at the end of their shift, their supervisor, Bill, was waiting for them. "Heard you two had quite a morning," he said, waving them into his small office. "Police called to verify your employment. Sounds like you handled a tough situation really well." James shrugged. "We just did what anyone would do." Bill shook his head. "Not everyone would have stopped to listen to that kid. Not everyone would have noticed something was wrong in the first place." He leaned back in his chair. "The detective who called, Rivera, I think her name was. She asked if you'd be willing to speak with the girl again. Said the child's asking, for you." James was surprised. "Me? Why?" "You're probably the first adult who believed her," Bill said simply. "That means something." After discussing the logistics and getting approval for a modified schedule the next day, James headed home. His wife, Nancy, was already in the kitchen when he arrived, preparing dinner while helping their 10-year-old son with homework. "You're later than usual," Nancy noted, giving him a quick kiss. James hugged her a moment longer than normal. "Had an unusual day," he said, then ruffled his son's hair. "How was school, buddy?" "Dad, I'm trying to concentrate," his son complained, focused on a math problem. Nancy gave James a curious look, sensing something was different. After their son went upstairs to play, James told her everything that had happened. "That poor child," Nancy whispered, tears in her eyes. "And to think they were just a few blocks from us this whole time." "The detective asked if I'd be willing to see her again tomorrow," James said. "Apparently she's asking for me." Nancy squeezed his hand. "Of course you should go. She trusts you." The next morning, instead of his usual route, James found himself walking into a brick building downtown that housed various social services offices. Detective Rivera met him in the lobby. "Thank you for coming," she said, shaking his hand. "Lily had a rough night at the emergency placement. Nightmares, anxiety. She keeps asking about her dog and about you." "How is the dog?" James asked. "Stable. Vet says he has some broken ribs but should recover." She led him down a hallway. "We found some relatives, by the way. Maternal grandmother in Ohio. Seems promising, but it will take time to arrange everything." They stopped outside a brightly painted door. Inside, James could see Lily sitting at a small table with a woman he presumed was a counselor. The girl was drawing something, her blonde head bent in concentration. "Just a few minutes," Detective Rivera cautioned. "She's had a lot of questioning already and we don't want to overwhelm her." James nodded and entered the room. When Lily looked up and saw him, her face lit up with a smile, the first real smile he'd seen from her. "James, you came." She jumped. up from her chair and ran to him. "Hey there," he said warmly, kneeling down to her level. "I heard you were asking for me." The counselor stood and introduced herself as Beth, then stepped aside to give them some space while remaining in the room. "Look what I drew," Lily said, pulling James to the table. She showed him a crayon drawing of a garbage truck with 2 stick figures beside it. "That's you and Pete, and that's me." She pointed to a small figure standing next to them. "That's a great drawing," James said, genuinely touched. "Ms. Beth says I can keep it for my memory book." Lily picked up another paper, "And I drew Buddy too. They told me he's at the animal doctor getting better." "That's what I heard too," James confirmed. Lily's face grew serious. "They said I might go live with my grandma. I haven't seen her since I was little." "Your mom's mom, right?" James asked, gently. "The one in the picture you keep?" Lily nodded. "Dad didn't let her visit after Mom died. He said she asked too many questions." James could imagine what kind of questions a concerned grandmother might have asked, seeing signs of trouble. "She's probably missed you very much," he said. "Do you think she'll like me?" Lily asked, her voice small. "I'm sure she'll love you," James assured her. "How could she not?" Lily seemed to consider this, then asked, "What about Buddy? Can he come too?" "We'll have to ask your grandma about that," Beth interjected kindly from across the room. "But many grandmas love dogs." Lily nodded, accepting this answer for now. Then she looked at James again. "Are they in jail? Dad and Karen and Tyler?" James glanced at Beth, who gave a slight nod indicating he could answer. "Yes, they are," he said carefully. "The police found the things you told them about in your house." "Tyler said no one would believe me because I'm just a kid," Lily said, a hint of pride in her voice. "But you believed me right away." James felt a lump in his throat. "That's because brave people tell the truth no matter how old they are." Lily thought about this for a moment. "I wasn't brave before, I was too scared." "Being scared doesn't mean you're not brave," James explained. "Being brave means doing the right thing even when you're scared. And that's exactly what you did." Their time together passed quickly. Lily showed James more drawings and told him about the nice lady she stayed with last night, who had 3 cats and made pancakes for breakfast. When it was time for him to leave, she gave him a tight hug. "Will I see you again?" she asked. James wasn't sure what the right answer was. He looked to Beth for guidance. "James has to go back to his job and his family," Beth explained to Lily. "But maybe he can write you a letter that you can take with you to your grandma's house. Would you like that?" Lily nodded enthusiastically. "And I can write back." "I'd like that," James agreed, relieved to have a way to keep some connection without overstepping boundaries. As he was leaving, Detective Rivera stopped him in the hallway. "You're good with her," she observed. "Have you considered volunteering?" "With the court-appointed Special Advocates program. They work with kids in the system." James hadn't thought about it before, but something about the idea resonated with him. "I might look into that," he said. "The investigation is moving fast," Rivera told him. "We found a lot more evidence than we expected. Looks like Thompson was a mid-level distributor working for a larger operation. The son has already started talking, trying to cut a deal." "What about the abuse allegations?" James asked. Rivera's expression hardened. "Medical exam found evidence consistent with Lily's claims. Old fractures healed improperly, malnutrition. It's not good, but she's getting proper care now." James felt a mix of anger and relief. Anger at what Lily had endured. Relief that it was over. As he walked back to his car, the autumn sun broke through the clouds. The city around him seemed different somehow, as if he was seeing it with new eyes. How many other children were out there waiting for someone to notice them? To believe them? Back on his route the next day, James found himself paying closer attention to the houses he passed, the people he glimpsed through windows. Pete noticed the change in him. "You can't save them all," his partner said during their lunch break. "What happened with Lily? That was special. That was fate or something." James nodded. "I know. But I'm thinking about volunteering, maybe on weekends. There's a program for kids in the system. Pete seemed surprised but supportive. Good for you, man. That takes heart. When they passed the Thompson house later that day, police tape still cordoned off the property. A different kind of truck was parked outside. Crime scene cleanup according to the logo. Wonder what will happen to the place, Pete mused. Hopefully someone good will move in, James replied. Someone who deserves a nice neighborhood. That evening, James sat at his kitchen table, a blank note card in front of him. He'd promised Lily a letter, but he wasn't sure what to write. How do you say goodbye to a child who briefly entered your life under such intense circumstances? After several false starts, he kept it simple. Dear Lily, I'm so proud of you for being brave. Remember that what happened to you doesn't define who you are or who you can become. You're strong, smart, and important. I know you're going to do great things, your friend, James. He added a small drawing of a garbage truck at the bottom, nowhere near as good as her artwork, but he hoped it would make her smile. Nancy watched him seal the envelope. You made a difference, she said softly. James shook his head. She's the one who made the difference. She just needed someone to listen. As he handed the letter to Detective Rivera the next day, he felt a sense of closure mixed with hope. Lily's journey was just beginning, healing, adjusting, finding a new normal with her grandmother. It wouldn't be easy, but she had already shown more courage than many adults he knew. She's going to be okay, isn't she? He asked Rivera. The detective, usually so professional and reserved, allowed herself a small smile. Kids are resilient. With the right support, they can overcome almost anything. And this one, she's got something special, a fighter's spirit. James nodded, thinking of the little girl who had run to a garbage truck on a cold October morning, changing not only her own life but his as well. Some people spend their whole lives looking for purpose, for a moment that matters. James had found his in the most unexpected way, and he knew he would never be the same. 3 weeks passed since Lily had run to James's garbage truck that cold October morning. The Thompson case had made the local news, though they carefully protected Lily's identity, referring to her only as a minor child. The story gained attention when police discovered connections to a larger drug ring operating throughout the county. James followed the coverage with interest, but his main concern remained Lily's well-being. On a rainy Thursday, James was just finishing his route when his supervisor called. Got a message for you, Bill said. Detective Rivera wants you to call her back, said it's about the Thompson case. James felt a flutter of concern. Did she say what it's about? Nope, just left her number and asked for you to call when you can. James finished his shift quickly and called Rivera from the break room before heading home. She answered on the second ring. Mr. Miller, thanks for getting back to me, she said, her voice sounding more relaxed than during their previous interactions. I wanted to update you on Lily's situation. The grandmother's background check came back clean and she's completed all the required interviews and home visits. Lily's going to Ohio this weekend. James felt both happy and a little sad. That's good news. How is she doing? Better than expected. The therapy is helping. And here's something you'll like. The dog is fully recovered and cleared to travel with her. James smiled at that. Buddy's going too? That's great. There's something else, Rivera continued. Lily's grandmother asked if you'd be willing to see Lily off. Apparently, Lily talks about you constantly. The garbage man who saved her, that's what she calls you. James was touched. Of course I'll come. When and where? They arranged the details, and James hung up feeling a mix of emotions. He was genuinely happy that Lily would have a fresh start with family who cared for her, but he also felt a surprising attachment to this brave little girl who had burst into his life so unexpectedly. When he told Nancy about the call that evening, she insisted on coming along. I want to meet this special kid, she said, and her grandmother too. Maybe we can stay in touch, send Christmas cards or something. You think that would be okay? James asked, uncertain about the boundaries in such an unusual situation. Nancy shrugged. Why not? That child could use all the support of adults in her life that she can get. Saturday morning arrived with clear skies and a crisp November chill. James and Nancy drove to the Child Services office where they'd arranged to meet Lily and her grandmother before they left for Ohio. James felt oddly nervous, as if he were meeting an old friend rather than a child he'd only spoken to twice. They arrived. Detective Rivera was already there, along with Beth, the counselor James had met before. "They're in the back room getting Lily's things together," Rivera explained, leading them down the hallway. Her grandmother drove in yesterday and spent the night at a hotel with Lily. They seem to be bonding well. The room they entered was bright and cheerful, with colorful children's artwork on the walls. Lily was kneeling on the floor beside a small suitcase, carefully placing folded clothes inside. A white fluffy dog with a bandage around his middle lay beside her, watching protectively. An older woman with silver-streaked hair and Lily's same blue eyes was helping sort through a pile of drawings. When Lily looked up and saw James, her face broke into a wide smile. "James, you came!" She jumped up and ran to him, throwing her arms around his waist in a hug. The little dog followed, sniffing curiously at James's work boots. "I told you he'd come," the older woman said, standing up with a warm smile. "You must be Mr. Miller. I'm Helen Parker, Lily's grandmother." James shook her hand. "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Parker. This is my wife, Nancy." "Please, call me Helen," she insisted, including Nancy in her greeting. "I can't thank you enough for what you did for my granddaughter." Lily tugged at James's hand. "Did you see? Buddy's all better. The doctor fixed him." James knelt down to the dog's level. "Hey there, buddy. You look good." The small dog wagged his tail and cautiously approached, allowing James to gently pet his head. "Grandma has a big yard," Lily informed him seriously, "with real trees that I can climb if I want to, and no basement." James caught the significance of that detail. "That sounds perfect. We have a guest room that's going to be just for you," Helen told Lily. "We can paint it any color you want." "Purple," Lily said decisively, "with stars on the ceiling." "Purple it is," Helen agreed, and James could see the love in the older woman's eyes. Whatever had kept her away from Lily before was clearly not from lack of caring. As Lily showed Nancy her drawings and told her about the 3 cats at the foster home she'd been staying at, James spoke quietly with Helen. "She seems to be adjusting well," he observed. Helen's face showed a complex mix of emotions. "She has nightmares still, and she checks the locks on the doors about 10 times before she can sleep. But she's talking, she's expressing herself. The therapist says that's a very good sign." "The detective mentioned you're in Ohio?" Helen nodded. "A small town called Riverdale, about 20 miles outside of Cincinnati. I teach 3rd grade there." She hesitated, then added, "I tried to stay in touch after my daughter died, but John made it difficult. Then he moved here and I lost track of them completely. I've spent the last 2 years trying to find them." James felt a wave of sadness for this woman who had lost not only her daughter, but nearly lost her granddaughter as well. "I should have tried harder," Helen said, her voice dropping. "I knew something wasn't right." "You're here now," James reassured her. "That's what matters." Helen took a deep breath and nodded. "Yes, and we're going to make up for lost time." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small notebook. "I wanted to give you my address and phone number. Lily would love to get letters from you if that's something you'd be comfortable with." "I'd like that," James said, accepting the paper. "Nancy was just saying we should stay in touch." "Well, there's always room for visitors in Riverdale if you ever find yourselves in Ohio," Helen offered. Their conversation was interrupted by Lily calling them over. "Grandma, James, look what I made." She held up a carefully folded paper airplane. "Beth showed me how." "That's a good one," James approved. "Have you tested it yet?" Lily shook her head. "Can I fly it in here?" Beth, who had been quietly observing from the corner, nodded. "Just this once, since it's a special day." Lily took careful aim and launched the paper airplane across the room. It sailed in a graceful arc before landing at Detective Rivera's feet. The detective picked it up with a smile and handed it back. "Nice flight," she said. "You could be a pilot someday." "I want to be a helper," Lily said. "Like you and James. And Beth. I want to find kids who need help." The adults exchanged glances, moved by her words. "That's a wonderful goal," Helen told her, "and you have plenty of time to figure out exactly what kind of helper you want to be." As the time for goodbyes approached, James found himself feeling emotional. It was strange how quickly this child had become important to him. He'd seen thousands of kids on his route over the years, waving from windows or watching the truck, with fascination, but none had impacted his life like Lily. "We should hit the road soon if we want to make it to Columbus before dark," Helen said, checking her watch. Lily nodded but looked sad. "I don't want to say goodbye to James and Miss Nancy." "It's not really goodbye," Nancy told her, kneeling down to her level. "We have your address now and you have ours. We can write letters and send pictures. And maybe visit someday," James added. Lily brightened at this. "Promise?" "I promise we'll stay in touch," James said carefully, not wanting to make promises he couldn't keep. Lily seemed to accept this. She went to her suitcase and dug around until she found a folded piece of paper. "I made this for you," she said, handing it to James. It was a crayon drawing of 4 figures, a tall man labeled James, a woman, a little girl holding a dog, and an older woman. At the top, in careful lettering, she had written, "My helpers." "Thank you," James said, his voice thick. "I'll keep this on my refrigerator at home." The final goodbyes were quick. Hugs, a few tears from Lily, and final reassurances from the adults that this was a happy day, the start of something new and better. James and Nancy walked Helen and Lily to the parking lot, where Helen's sensible blue sedan was packed with Lily's few belongings. Buddy was secured in a small carrier in the back seat. Lily climbed in beside him, rolling down her window for one last wave. "Don't forget to write," she called as Helen started the engine. "I won't," James promised. They stood waving until the car turned the corner and disappeared from view. Nancy slipped her hand into James's and squeezed. "You okay?" she asked. James nodded, feeling a complicated mix of emotions. "Yeah, she's going to be all right." Detective Rivera approached them in the parking lot. "Thank you both for coming. It meant a lot to Lily." "Will there be a trial?" James asked. Rivera nodded. "Eventually. The father and stepmother aren't talking, but the brother is cooperating. He's looking at a reduced sentence in exchange for information about their suppliers. He's also admitted to the abuse, which means Lily probably won't have to testify in person." "That's good," Nancy said. "She shouldn't have to face them again." "The system doesn't always work," Rivera admitted. "But in this case, I think we've got enough evidence to put them away for a long time." As they walked back to their car, James thought about Lily starting her new life hundreds of miles away. He thought about the countless other children who might be living in similar situations, waiting for someone to notice, to listen, to believe them. "I've been thinking about what Detective Rivera said before," he told Nancy as they drove home. "About volunteering with that advocate program." Nancy smiled. "I think you'd be great at it. You notice things, James. You always have. And you listen. Really listen." James nodded, his decision made. "I'll call on Monday, see what's involved." As they pulled into their driveway, James looked at Lily's drawing again. "My helpers," she had written. Such a simple phrase, but it carried so much meaning. He hadn't set out to be anyone's hero that Tuesday morning. He'd just been doing his job, following the same route he'd followed for 15 years. But sometimes he realized the most important moments in life come when you least expect them, even on an ordinary day, on an ordinary street, in the most ordinary of jobs. Sometimes all it takes to change a life is the courage to stop, to listen, and to believe. 6 months passed since Lily had left with her grandmother for Ohio. Winter had come and gone, and spring was now painting the neighborhood with fresh colors. James continued his garbage collection route, but much had changed in his life since that October morning when a small, brave girl had run to his truck. True to his word, James had called about the court-appointed special advocates program the Monday after Lily left. After an interview process, background checks, and 30 hours of training, he was now volunteering as an advocate for children in the foster care system. Every other weekend he visited 2 children, brothers aged 6 and 8, who had been removed from their home due to neglect. His role was simple but vital: to be a consistent, caring adult in their lives while the court decided their future. Nancy supported his new mission wholeheartedly, often helping him brainstorm activities for his visits with the boys. "You found your calling," she told him one evening as he prepared a folder of baseball cards to show the younger boy, who was developing an interest in the sport. "I don't know about that," James replied modestly. "I'm just trying to be helpful." The Thompson case had finally gone to trial in February. John Thompson and his wife Karen had both received lengthy sentences for drug trafficking and child abuse. Tyler, the teenage son, had been given a reduced sentence in a juvenile facility in exchange for his testimony. James had attended one day of the trial, sitting quietly in the back of the courtroom, grateful that Lily didn't have to be there in person. Her recorded testimony, taken by specialized child interviewers, had been powerful enough. Throughout these months, James had kept his promise to stay in touch with Lily. They exchanged letters every few weeks. Hers were filled with colorful drawings and stories about her new school, her dog buddy's adventures, and her grandmother's cooking. James wrote back with news from the neighborhood, funny stories from his route, and encouragement for her continued healing. Nancy often added her own notes or small gifts, hair clips, stickers, or craft supplies that she thought Lily might enjoy. It was a warm April morning when Pete noticed James smiling as he climbed into the garbage truck. "What's got you in such a good mood?" Pete asked, starting the engine. James held up an envelope. "Letter from Lily. Came yesterday, but I didn't have time to read it until this morning." Pete grinned. "How's our girl doing?" "Really well, actually. Her grandmother signed her up for a theater program, and she got to be a tree in a play about the environment. She sent a picture." James pulled out a photo of Lily in a brown and green costume with branch-like arms raised high, her smile wide and genuine. "Looks happy," Pete observed. "Hard to believe it's the same scared kid from last year." James nodded, carefully putting the letter back in his pocket. "She says they're thinking of getting another dog to keep Buddy company, and she's helping her grandma plant a vegetable garden." They started their route, the familiar rhythm of the day settling around them. The neighborhood was mostly the same, though the Thompson house had new owners now, a young couple with a toddler who always waved enthusiastically at the garbage truck. James always waved back, grateful that the house had found a happier family. Around midday, James's phone rang. It was Nancy. "Hey," he answered, stepping away from the truck for a moment. "Everything okay?" "Everything's fine," Nancy assured him. "Just got a surprise call from Detective Rivera. She wanted to know if we're free for dinner tonight." James was puzzled. "Dinner? Did she say why?" "She said she has someone who wants to meet you." Sounded mysterious, but in a good way. "All right," James agreed. "Tell her yes." The rest of his shift, James wondered about the dinner invitation. He and Rivera had kept in occasional contact because of the Thompson case, but they weren't exactly friends who got together socially. It was unusual, to say the least. That evening, James and Nancy arrived at the restaurant Rivera had suggested, a casual family place with good food and a relaxed atmosphere. Rivera was already at a table, dressed in civilian clothes rather than her usual professional attire. "Thanks for coming on short notice," she said, standing to greet them. "No problem," James replied. "Nancy said you have someone who wants to meet me?" Rivera smiled. "They should be here any minute. Let's order drinks while we wait." They had just received their sodas when Rivera looked toward the door and waved. James turned to see who she was greeting, and his heart nearly stopped. Walking toward them was Helen Parker, and beside her, practically bouncing with excitement, was Lily. Her hair was longer now, pulled back in a neat ponytail, and she looked healthier, her face fuller, her eyes brighter. Buddy wasn't with them, but Lily was clutching a small backpack with dog paws printed on it. "Surprise," Lily shouted when she saw James rushing forward. James stood up in shock as Lily threw her arms around him in a hug. "Lily, what are you doing here?" Helen approached more calmly, smiling at James's stunned expression. "We wanted to surprise you," she explained. "We're in town for the week because I needed to sign some final paperwork for the house sale, and Lily insisted we couldn't leave without seeing you." "We drove 6 hours," Lily announced proudly, "and we listened to music the whole way, and Grandma let me have a milkshake at lunch." James laughed, still processing the surprise. "Well, I'm very happy to see you. You remember my wife Nancy, right?" Lily nodded and gave Nancy a hug too. "Thank you for the hair clips you sent. I wear them to school all the time." "You're very welcome," Nancy said warmly. "I love the pictures you send us." They all sat down, with Lily insisting on taking the chair next to James. She immediately began pulling items from her backpack to show him. A report card with all A's and B's, photos of her and Buddy in their backyard, a certificate she'd earned for a school science project. "And look," she said, pulling out a small frame. Inside was a pressed flower. "This is from our garden, the first flower that bloomed. Grandma helped me press it so I could bring it to you." "That's beautiful," James said, genuinely touched by the gesture. As they ordered dinner and began to eat, James observed the changes in Lily. She was still talkative and enthusiastic, but there was a new confidence in her manner. She made eye contact easily now, laughed often, and didn't flinch at loud noises the way she had before. She was healing. Helen shared updates too. "Lily's therapist says she's making exceptional progress," she told them quietly while Lily was distracted coloring a kid's menu. "She still has moments, of course, nightmares sometimes, certain triggers that make her anxious, but overall she's adjusting wonderfully." "She looks great," Nancy commented. "Happy?" Helen nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "She is. We both are. It's like getting a second chance, you know? After losing my daughter, I never thought I'd have family again. Now I have Lily." Detective Rivera, who had been mostly quiet, letting the reunion unfold, finally spoke up. "I have some news that might interest all of you. The Thompson case led us to a much larger drug operation. The information Tyler provided helped us make arrests all the way up to the regional distributor level." "So something good came out of it all," James reflected. "More than that," Rivera continued. "The department received some grant money as a result of the bust. They've decided to start a new community outreach program focusing on recognizing signs of child abuse, particularly for people who work in neighborhoods, mail carriers, delivery drivers, utility workers, and garbage collectors," James added, seeing where she was going. Rivera nodded. "Exactly. We'd like you to help develop the training, James. Share your experience, what you noticed about Lily's situation, how you handled it." James was surprised. "Me? I'm not an expert or anything." "But you did everything right," Rivera insisted. "You noticed something was wrong. You took the time to listen. You knew when to call for help. Not everyone would have." Lily, who had been listening to the conversation, looked up from her coloring. "You saved me," she said simply, with the straightforward honesty of a child. James felt a lump in his throat. "I just did what anyone should do." "But not everyone would," Helen repeated Rivera's point. "Most people are too busy, too distracted, or too afraid of getting involved." James considered the offer. His volunteer work with CASA was already taking up his weekends, but this sounded important too. "I'd be happy to help if you think it would make a difference." "It will," Rivera assured him. After dinner, they walked to a nearby ice cream shop. For dessert, Lily skipped ahead with Nancy, chatting happily about her new best friend in Ohio and the puppy they were thinking of adopting as a friend for Buddy. Helen walked beside James, watching her granddaughter with a contented smile. "She wanted to bring Buddy to meet you, but the hotel doesn't allow pets. My neighbor is watching him." "How long are you staying in town?" James asked. "Until Sunday. The house closing is tomorrow, and then we have a few days to tie up loose ends before heading back." She hesitated, then added, "Actually, I was wondering if Lily could spend some time with you and Nancy this weekend. I have some difficult things to do. Cleaning out the last of my daughter's possessions that were in storage, meeting with her old friends to give them mementos, things that might be upsetting for Lily. Of course, James said immediately. We'd love to have her over. Our son is away at a school camp this weekend, so his room is free if she wants to stay overnight. Helen looked relieved. That would be wonderful, thank you. At the ice cream shop, Lily got a cone with rainbow sprinkles and insisted on taking a photo with James to show my class for show and tell. They crowded together, ice cream cones in hand, while Nancy snapped the picture on Helen's phone. Perfect, Helen declared, looking at the result. Lily, what do we say to Detective Rivera for arranging this surprise? Thank you, Lily said dutifully, then added with a grin, even though you arrested my family. The adults laughed, relieved that Lily could now speak about her past with such matter-of-factness. As the evening came to an end, they made plans for the weekend. Lily would come over Saturday morning and stay until Sunday afternoon. I'll bring my new card game, Lily told. James, Grandma's teaching me gin rummy. I look forward to it, James said, giving her one last hug goodbye. As they drove home, Nancy squeezed James's hand. She looked so different, so much happier. James nodded, feeling a profound sense of satisfaction. It's amazing what 6 months of safety and love can do. You know what else is amazing? Nancy asked. The ripple effect of one decision. If you hadn't stopped that day, if you hadn't taken the time to talk to her. James didn't need to hear the rest. He knew exactly what Nancy meant. One small action, stopping the garbage truck, kneeling down to listen to a frightened child, had changed not only Lily's life but his own as well. It had led him to volunteer work he found deeply meaningful, and now to this new opportunity, to help train others. The world is full of Lilies, he said quietly. Kids waiting for someone to notice, to care. I was just in the right place at the right time for her. No, Nancy disagreed gently. You were the right person at the right time. There's a difference. As they pulled into their driveway, James thought about the weekend ahead, showing Lily around their home, introducing her to their dog, playing card games, and maybe planting some flowers in the backyard. Normal everyday activities that would once have been impossible for a little girl trapped in fear. Sometimes the biggest changes come from the smallest moments of courage, he reflected. Lily's courage to run to a garbage truck on a cold morning, his courage to stop and listen. And now, because of those moments, both their lives were forever changed for the better. In a world that often felt chaotic and broken, that simple truth gave James hope. One person paying attention, one person caring enough to act. It could make all the difference in the world. It already had for one brave little girl who now had the chance to grow up safe, loved, and free. Retry.